Hi, well, thank you, Admiral Moore, Mr. Gertz, for being with us today. Unlike Mr. Courtney, I want to focus mostly on aircraft carrier maintenance. And when we develop the class maintenance plans for the Nimitz class carrier, are there specific times, durations for the availabilities that were developed into the class maintenance plan when we, first brought the Nimitz class online?
Yeah, when we first built the class maintenance plan, the incremental maintenance plan, as it's called today, the plan was developed with a 24-month cycle, and we expected to have ships in availability every 6 months, every 2 years. At the time, that included
the first DPIA, docking plan of incremental availability in the ship's life. What was the duration intended to be for that?
At the 24-month cycle, it was at 10.5 months.
Okay, and so currently the George H.W. Bush is in a DPIA, the first in its life cycle. What's the duration of that availability?
The notional duration for the Nimitz class today in the 36-month cycle is 16 months. Based on
okay, so the notional is shifted based off of a 36-month, I assume, the OFRP model that we've gone to now. However, you say it's notionally 16 months.
That's
and the Bush's availability is planned for 16 months?
No, George H.W. Bush, because of unique work on that ship and because of other work in the shipyard, is going to execute at 28 months.
Okay, so 28 months versus the 16 months that it should be planned.
That's correct.
Well, you say unique work. I visited the shipyard myself. The shipyard CO told me that shafting and propellers was the limiting path work. I don't find that to be too unique over the class of ships. So can you explain the limiting work also going on in the shipyard, MTS conversion, other submarine work, if we prioritize that ahead of aircraft carrier maintenance?
Well, I think it was a balanced approach. I don't want to disagree with the shipyard commander, but there's a number of other things on that ship that is driving the length of that availability.
Right, I'm familiar with the other things, but I was told it was shafting and propellers, which seems unlikely to me to be the correct
I would
answer.
agree with you there.
So to move on, just to talk about successful completion of availabilities within timeframes, we usually use that as a milestone. And so coming out of this avail, are you going to say it's successful if we complete it in 28 months, or is it already a failure because it's 28 instead of 16, which it should have been?
Oh, no, based on the work that we have to do and based on the work on the Wyoming to deliver a strategic asset and the work that we have to do on the moored training ship San Francisco, which is critical to our training our nuclear workforce. It's a balanced plan. If we finish in 28 months, it'll be successful. Obviously, we're trying to get that done earlier. But back to some of the earlier conversations, based on the available capacity we had and the work, we've tried to lay out a realistic plan that we can deliver to. So 28 months for Bush will be successful based on the work and the other work that was in the shipyard at the time.
So then if you're saying that only 30% complete on time, they're completing on time to a much extended duration above what the class maintenance plan originally prescribed when we invested in the Nimitz class carrier. Is that correct?
Well, no, that's not correct. Bush is at 28 months, but 9 out of the last 10 carriers have delivered on time.
On time per the duration in the class maintenance plan for
Yes,
the ship's design?
Yeah, on time in accordance with the class maintenance plan.
9 out of the last 10?
9 out of the last 10.
Okay, so I've just happened to frequently look around the waterfront in Norfolk, and it appears to me that there are currently 6 carriers in Norfolk that are not deployable. I can go down the list. We have the Eisenhower not deployable in its training cycle. We have the 73, the GW, which is in its RCOH, the 74 not deployable. It's waiting for several years before it RCOH starts. The 75 has an emergent casualty, is not able to deploy and relieve in the Gulf, approximately 2 months behind schedule. 77 we've discussed in its 28-month availability, which seems excessive based off of the life cycle maintenance plan. And then 78, the Ford, we've basically invested $13 billion in a nuclear-powered floating berthing barge that's not deployable because of the aircraft elevators and the yet untested dual-band radar, catapults, and arresting gear. Is that an adequate assessment that 6 out of our 11 carriers are sitting in Norfolk and non-deployable?
Well, I mean, Eisenhower is in a workup cycle like all carriers are. She'll be ready to deploy right after the first year.
I'll give you a buy for that one. But
Truman will have her fixed here shortly. It's not unusual. We would have 2 carriers at any one time in depot maintenance. You always have 1 carrier in refueling. Gerald R. Ford is new. Obviously, new construction. There's 4. Once we get Truman back.
So the taxpayers have made a good investment to currently have 6 carriers on the East Coast, plus I understand 1 on the West Coast, 7 of our 11 carriers in a non-deployable status, and we're having to extend the Lincoln on deployment because of 1 emergent casualty on 1 carrier. And that's where you desire to be in our readiness status for the aircraft carrier fleet?
We certainly would have liked Truman to have deployed on time. There's 3 other carriers ready to go right after the first year that came out of maintenance. So yes, I
So we were supposed to, by OFRP, develop a new surge capability, but that doesn't seem to be the case when the 1 carrier we have deployed can't be relieved on time. So is the OFRP actually generating that surge capability that we need to maintain presence?
I think that question is probably best left to the fleet commanders, but in general, the 36-month OFRP provides a lot more surge capacity than the previous models that we operated under. You basically get the carrier, after you consider 6 months maintenance and 12 months workup, the carrier's deployed.
But are we ever doing just 6 months maintenance? Is 6 months still
6 months is
PIA?
the notional for a PIA, sure.
And how many PIAs have we completed in 6 months over the last 5 years?
Well, every one of them, every one of the PIAs in the 3 years I've been in this job have completed on time, every single one.
But not the DPIAs?
No, not the DPIAs, but we just finished Nimitz, our oldest carrier, on time. In fact, 4 days early out of a DPIA, going to 16 months.
And what was the duration of that DPIA?
That was at 14 months.
Okay.
And Carl Vinson's in the yard right now at 17 months because of some unique work we have to do ship, but notionally 16 months is where we're trying to head with the carriers in the 36
So then this seems endemic just on the East Coast? Because you're listing the West Coast carriers being much more successful.
No, I mean, I think the Bush is at 28 months because of the issues I told you before. That's a unique thing.
So, I mean, we want to be here for Readiness to provide you the tools to get the carriers out to deploy on time. So what else do you need to do that? I've been thinking a lot about, the situation we have with why the Nimitz class carriers are not successfully regenerating for deployment. And there seems to be some point in time when we went to an all nuclear fleet, we were just no longer able to keep up with the capacity for the maintenance anymore. If, I think about my first deployment on Truman. I did their first deployment. We came back. We did their first PIA. We finished a few days early, and that was a resounding success. And over the course of time, when we were doing the 24-month cycle, we were successfully completing the availabilities on time, deploying within that time frame. But then there was some point when the conventional carriers went away, when you lost Kitty Hawk, when you lost Independence, and all of the work only relied on 2 nuclear capable shipyards. So do we have the capacity we need between Norfolk Naval Shipyard and Puget Sound to do the work that we need?
We absolutely do.
Well, then why do we have 6 carriers sitting in Norfolk that can't deploy?
Well, you have 2 carriers in maintenance which are scheduled, which are delivering on time. We're going to fix the Truman. You have 3 other carriers which are out of
Well,
maintenance.
explain to me 74. Why do we bring 74 back 2.5 years before GW is going to be done with their refueling and not deploy them? I was just there the other day.
Yeah,
and it appears to me that they actually have enough fuel to deploy again, at least a limited deployment. So why are we not deploying
Dennis is
them?
available if we want to use it.
Well, they told me there weren't. The ship's CO specifically told me that they've already started down the path of what they need to do to prep for the RCOH. They only have 2 more underways, and those are just, vacapes, op area, carrier quals underways. So are you telling me that we are going to get the rest of the use out of the fuel that we have in 74?
We're going to
changing
use
the plan?
74 as a CQ carrier over the course of the next year before she goes into RCOH. That's the plan, and we'll make as maximum use of the fuel that's available on that ship.
Well, they told me they only have 2 more underways. Should I refer to the operational fleet commander about that?
Well, I think you should. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you're telling me that you have all the resources that you need to maintain our carriers?
We do.
Ms. Luria, you had another set of questions.
Well, thank you again. Thank you again, Chairman Garamendi, for allowing me to participate today. Wanted to go back to aircraft carriers. Specifically wanted to talk about the Ford, and I know Admiral Moore, dating back to 2011, you were PEO carriers before your current position. And, over the course of the Ford, there are 4 particular technologies that have been the most challenging: the dual band radar, the catapults, the arresting gear, and the aircraft elevators. Can you give us a brief summary of where each of those are? I'm most interested in the aircraft elevators because my understanding, not the aircraft elevators, the ammunition elevators, because my understanding and my most recent visit, there were only 2 that were operable. None of those go to the magazines. If you can't put ammunition in the magazines, you can't deploy the ship, and it's not really an asset that's available for war fighting. And in addition to that, what is the long-term focus for getting that work done? I've asked several times from the Navy to have a specific schedule that takes into account the shock trials, the eventual deployment, and all of the other pieces that need to go into place. So would really like to focus on the Ford for a few minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Maybe I can take that question. So I'm happy to provide you a specific schedule that works in all the timelines. We'll have the ship after it goes on its PDT&T over the next 18 months.
So is there an actual schedule? Because
Yes,
I got
there
the update to the Senate Armed Services Committee, and it didn't have an actual schedule that included the deployment and all the other timelines.
Yes, ma'am. I've got it here. I'm happy to sit down with you and share it with you, or schedule an office call and go through that in whatever detail you'd like. Over the weekend, we certified our 3rd elevator, so that's turned over to the crew.
Right, but that only goes from the flight deck to the hangar bay. You're still not putting anything in or out of the magazines.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So we are on track for the upper elevators. We have 3 of the lower elevators in construction and test. They're moving. They're going down. I'll happy to run through the schedule with you. We're ferrying in the completion of those with the need dates for the crew for training and certification when they start flight ops in the calendar year, and working in how we're going to finish up those elevators in tandem with availability of ship when it's over at the Naval Station.
Okay, so it's going to deploy on time? What is on time? It should have already deployed by now, right? So are we looking at 23? Are we looking at 24? Is even that optimistic?
In terms of operational deployment, we're working that right now with the CNO. We should have that next 30 days.
So you do or you don't have a full schedule?
We are re-looking at that full schedule in lieu of shock trials and working with the CNO to make sure we've got alignment between the CNO, the fleet, and myself in delivering all the elements of the ship for deployment. So we should have that available to you when it's available. I'm happy to come over and brief.
Okay, I look forward to talking about that. And I'm not sure if Mr. Gertz or Admiral Moore would like to provide the update on the dual band radar, catapults, and arresting gear and where we are with those systems and testing and operability.
So we're working all those. We'll go test those in the PDT&E session. So we've completed the work we had planned to do over the PSA with those. When the ship goes to after PSA, we'll verify the maintenance activities, and we will, in this next 18 months, fully exercise all those systems as we train and certify crew and get those systems up and running. And our intent is to get, we've had 787 or 747, I think, traps and launches. Our intent is to put that in the thousands to fully check out all those systems, shake them all out, make sure they are ready to go to war.
So in that 700 or so launches and recoveries, did we meet the operational design requirements for successful launches and recoveries? Or I believe there was a higher than anticipated failure rate during that first set of testing. And what have we done to?
Yes, ma'am. The biggest issue is just sheer numbers. To get any confidence and reliability that we don't have a sample size large enough. And so our intent, working with the fleet and the captain in this next 18-month cycle, is to get thousands of reps and sets on those cycles. Make sure we're comfortable that we understand their reliability, confidence in their performance, and that we can train and certify the crew to operate those in a wartime environment.
Okay, and my last question is, and maybe Admiral Moore, since you have a lot of history with this program going back to 2011 as PEO carriers, when was the ship originally planned to deploy when construction started?
Probably the original delivery, the original delivery was in the 2013 timeframe, and so I think the original deployment date would probably be in the 2018 timeframe, if you look back based on what the schedules that were built for the original delivery plan.
So the original deployment should have been 2018.
That's correct.
A year ago, and best estimates were looking at 2024.
I think we'll beat that, but
6 years past that.
I think the Secretary will come give you the details, and we're working to pull it as far back to the left as we can. But I think we're going to beat 2024 for sure.
I just truly don't feel like this is a great investment as a taxpayer. $13 billion in a ship that's going to deploy 6 years past its original design timeline. And have we incorporated any of the lessons learned from the construction of the Ford in the 79?
Yes, ma'am, we have. 2 things ongoing. One is for those 4 systems, also done an independent review to make sure we've got the sustainment and all the things we need to sustain those systems, not just operate them. Secondly, we're seeing right now in 4 and 79 about an 18% reduction in the man hours to construct that ship. On the contract we have for 80 and 81, there'll be another 18% reduction. So yes, we have lots of lessons learned from first in class of that ship. We're incorporating even in elevators those lessons learned into the future ships.
So we chose not to prototype some of these systems on shore-based prototypes before building the Ford, specifically the aircraft elevators. Is it my understanding that we're now actually going to build a shore-based prototype in order to test these and make sure that they're fully operable, functional in the next of class?
Yes, ma'am. For the weapons elevators, we're building both a digital twin. We have a software version of that. We're doing a hardware in a loop version of that, as well as a full shore-based standalone system up at Philadelphia, which will allow us to both test anything we need as well as ensure we can support those as we work through the class of ships. It is a lesson learned, obviously.
So I think I'm out of town, but specifically, look forward to in the future talking about those types of lessons learned on other ship construction programs, either currently underway. I had the opportunity to visit the Zumwalt recently when I was out on the West Coast, and then also some of the planned classes that we have, the frigate, the large surface combatant, the unmanned surface vessels, and how we plan to avoid some of these pitfalls in those newer programs that we've experienced in, say, the last 5 ship construction programs that we've had.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.